the seed in every one of these lineages is what we in the Buddhist tradition would call bodhicitta. Now, bodhicitta is the heart seed. And it basically, it exists as a feeling, as a physical feeling, as an emotional feeling, but most importantly, it begins at the level of mind, which is, I will awaken for the sake of the whole. This is the heart seed of the world that our hearts, which is the fourth level, know is possible.
The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think we have to believe in our hearts. The way that we get there is by being there.
John Churchill has spent the last 3 decades deeply immersed in the Buddhic wisdom traditions, some traditions that stretch back as far as 18,000 years, the Bon people who revere a Buddha that lived in those past times of ancient civilizations. And what he shares on this podcast is a 7-stage initiatic path that all of us can identify as part of the process we're currently going through. By utilizing this map, understand how we can work with this 7-stage process to really bring ourselves to the full fruition of what we're capable of as individuals, and how this path can be utilized to transition us in this time between stories from a time of empire to the time of a kingdom, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So this podcast is one of my favorite podcasts of all time, and I can't wait to share it with you. And so without further ado, John Churchill. John Churchill, my brother.
Aubrey.
We're back.
We're back.
And we are deep in a writing process of a book, and we're going to try not to talk about that book today. That we're writing, From Empire to Kingdom, because what I want to talk to you about today was something that was wildly provocative, and that's the starting point of the conversation when we've been talking since the last podcast, and you mentioned that there was a tradition of a Buddhic tradition called the Bon people who actually identify a Buddha that was 18,000 years from 18,000 years ago, which is like almost pre-Atlantean from when we know the classic Atlantean civilization, and prior even to some of the oldest structures that we've discovered, like Göbekli Tepe and some of the things that Graham Hancock has explored. But it shows this kind of continuity of high-level spiritual development as like a planetary system that awakens and then goes asleep and then reawakens again.
Right.
And this Buddha, I have it written down here. It was a Buddha Tonpa Shenrab. It stayed in a continuous. There's been a continuous lineage that people just don't talk about because it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative of conventional consensus history and this idea of the continuity of higher level spiritual ideals.
That's right. Yeah, we need to take a planetary perspective on the rhythmic movement of great teachers through all traditions, right? So within the planetary dharma, when we're referring to a Buddha, we're referring to the same phenomena of a teacher that is also a Christ or a Messiah or whatever the other traditions, the other versions we have across the planet, which is essentially, if we understand both what the word Messiah and Christ actually mean, like the word Christos essentially means initiate. So what we're talking about is an ancient esoteric, but also it's been hidden because of the war with empire over the last few thousand years.
Right.
But a planetary initiatory tradition that had the ability to train many of the adepts right up to that level of development. So the Bon, so Buddhism has 5 main schools within it. 4 are the schools related to Shakyamuni Buddha, who came from India and who was born 2,500 years ago. And there's 1 school in Tibet, the Bon.
And that's Siddhartha.
That's Siddhartha. Yeah. That's right. So exactly. So Siddhartha technically the term Buddha refers to a particular level of initiation. He's functioning and teaching from what we call the Buddhic plane.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get the map of these 7 different levels of development / layers of the auric field of the planet.
That's right.
It's very interesting. So we're going to walk through that path. But what you're talking about is the 4th layer.
The 4th layer.
The Buddhic plane.
That's right.
The Christic plane.
The plane of the tzaddik within your tradition.
Right.
Exactly. And just to turn back to the Bond's teacher and Atlantis, within the esoteric tradition, it's understood that the Atlantean cycle was probably about 100,000-year cycle. So what we know as Atlantis, the fall of Atlantis, was the last, dying process of a whole cycle that's 100,000 years. Now,
right, and so that's for people to locate that. That's like 12,800 years ago when
that was the
flood,
the final,
when the Greenland ice sheets melted and the flood came, and then we think Atlantis was then. No, obviously not then. That when
was
it died.
The death of it, the final death, right? But within the esoteric tradition,
and then a lot of the megaliths, actually, just to mention this, a lot of the megaliths were post-Diluvian, after the flood, and what Graham Hancock is saying is these megaliths were the survivors of Atlantis that went around the world and were like, we need to encode, especially in some of these, we need to encode a memory of what happened.
That's right.
With these astrological symbols and signs, and also memories transmitted through, like our brother Matthias de Stefano, who remembers the warnings of actually Atlantis turning empirical in its nature, which actually, because of the empirical turning and the way that they were wielding spiritual power, they actually facilitated their own demise.
It was part of it,
which we find ourselves in actually another similar situation now.
It's a karmic echo of exactly the same situation.
Right.
It's not. It is with all the same beings reincarnating and the same cultures reincarnating.
Yeah.
Right. So if we understand it's 100,000 years of civilization, many, many, many Buddhas, right? Many, many tzaddiks, the final initiatory schools of our planet, our planetary initiatory system, was generating many, many, many.
And the universality of this is also super important, because for a long time I studied as my primary study the Toltec tradition. I spent time with Don Miguel Ruiz, who is a tzaddik, who is operating from the Buddhic plane. I know that. I felt it in my body, and you could say that, many of the people who spent time with Ram Dass would say the same thing about him.
Right.
And, but so in Don Miguel Ruiz in the Toltec tradition, the tzaddik was called the Nagual. And the Nagual, so there's different levels of Nagual. And there's the highest probably level of Nagual. But Nagual was the recognition of someone who is able to, through their own intent, master at least the mental plane.
Did it have? It had seven.
They don't actually illuminate, but they had it. They had. So if you go to Teotihuacan, they had an initiatic path that mimicked what a lot of these different levels were. So you would go to different places in there.
Is that Quetzalcoatl or Kulkan? It's Quetzalcoatl.
No, that was more the Aztec.
Aztec and the Mayans.
Toltecs predated.
Okay.
They predated that. So it's it's an even older lineage than the Aztecs and the Mayans. So a lot of those are Aztec and Mayan deities they didn't ascribe to, but they had an initiatic path that went through many of the different levels. My understanding, and we're going to get to this map that you have, my understanding is that to be a Nagual, you have to master the 3rd level at the very least, which is the mental plane.
Okay. I
don't know if mastering the Christic Buddhic plane was a part of their path, but it very well may have been, because frankly, I know by what I felt in my body, anthropologically, from what I could feel in my own heart, that Don Miguel Ruiz was operating from that,
Right.
whether that was a part of their teaching or whether that certain Naguals who had mastered the third level, which is the mental
Makes
plane,
sense.
sometimes broke into the Buddhic plane.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
For sure, that happened.
That's you have a good heart. You're
Yeah.
going to naturally open into that.
Yeah.
My sense is that the whole mythology of the rainbow serpent, which comes, I think, as Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan, and I'm sure there's probably a similar concept.
Sure. I mean, this was the genesis.
Right.
the dendrites of the healthy parts
Yes.
of Aztec and Mayan tradition. The
That's right.
Toltecs were the source point of that.
So to little context, both the high Andean people and the Tibetans are the Atlantean in terms of the physical body.
Right.
And so if we see the rainbow metaphor as part of the Andean South American Dharma, that's pointing to this rainbow, these 7 layers, and is pointing to the universality of a solar, this is a solar recognition. That's why it's universal.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's the sun.
It's Ra. It's Apollo.
It's the seven rays that
Right.
emanate from. Because within these traditions, including the Western tradition, the sun is understood to be a living being.
Yeah. I mean, in an ayahuasca journey with actually someone that we mutually know very well, Hamilton Souther, he actually started singing Icaros and called in the sun as a being.
Mm-hmm.
And this was early in my path. I mean, we're not not super early, but early enough, 2014, which is, I don't know, however many, 9 years ago. And I hadn't had a lot of encounter with someone who was intentionally calling in beings. Now, I started my ayahuasca path in 2010, and I experienced a lot of things, but Hamilton was able to actually speak English and actually like communicate what the fuck he was doing.
Right.
So, the sun was one of the beings that he called in, and I recognized like, holy shit, this isn't just a cosmological phenomenon of a star that has a particular quality. Yes, it is that, and it's something else, just like we're a body and we're a soul. The sun is a celestial body.
Soul is soul.
SOL, yes.
SOL. That's exactly. So your soul is my soul. We are solar beings.
Yep.
When we awaken to that level, we enter like solar culture. And frankly, we enter galactic culture because there are many souls. So you begin to interact with extra dimensional beings, which probably in your medicine work you've done, who are also functioning at the level of soul.
Yeah.
Right? In other parts of this amazing body of God.
Yeah. And one of the, I had a podcast with Zach Bush where he talked about there's phenomenon that occur within the cell that in each cell that actually mimic like the nuclear fusion that happens in the sun, and that we're having mini nuclear reactions creating energy within the cellular structure. And obviously he's a doctor, so it's beyond my exact
mini nuclear.
Yeah.
Well, we're photonic at the level of photons.
Right.
We don't think of that in medicine, but we have a photon structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is deeper. I think that might be deeper than electrons, right? Where actually you and I sitting here right now are flaming.
And we're producing light in a certain spectrum.
For sure.
And so the energy that we're producing, so he makes that correlation, which is super interesting. And then we're also water beings as well, mostly water. And I had a crazy experience. So I'm in Turkey, I'm in Bodrum, and we decide that we're going to have dinner on the dock that's going out to a bay.
Right.
And there's a big, like heavy mountain range, full moon night. And we watched, and it's the water, it's the bay. So the water is calm like glass. We don't hear it. We don't notice it. It's glassy, calm water. And then the full moon rises, and as soon as it rises above the mountain range, the water just starts going, whoo, 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 whoo. And we were like, we know that the moon affects the tides. Like, we get that. But to actually see that for an hour, we were sitting in this calm bay, and then the moment, and we noticed it, like, wow, the moon's rising. And as soon as the moon crests above the mountain range, the bay just starts rocking. And we're like, holy shit.
Wow.
This is like,
Wow.
this is a real phenomenon. And so, of course, it's affecting the waters in our body. Of course, like my stepfather, who was on the SWAT team in Compton, would all of him and his, and his fellow officers, when it was a full moon night, they all, they strapped their vests on a little tighter, and they looked at each other like, tonight's going to be crazy.
Right.
Because there's something that's happening to the waters in our body, which were 70% water.
Right.
So understanding that the connection between the sun and our solar energy
the sun
and the lunar
photon. So can I speak to this?
Yeah.
So if our solar body is the fourth of 7 bodies, it's also the fourth tissue of the planet. But the astral tissue, which is liquid. So with your physical body, your liquids resonate with the astral plane, with the effect of the moon, right? And so you have both. That is the whole astral dimension. That isn't just like some other dimension. That's how it interacts with the physical. And then you have the light coming from the sun. Now the light coming from the sun from the moon is the sun.
Yeah.
So if you think of the feeling of a full moon shining on water, you get the sense of the Buddhic layer of the astral plane that cleans the astral plane and brings that like Christic love energy down into the tissues. Does that make
Yeah, it does. It does.
Right?
And astra, I never even really thought of this, but astra is Latin for star.
The star.
So astral, of course, pertains to the stars in a certain way.
Well, the planets.
The planet.
That whole layer of activity. If you think of the astral plane is called the cosmic liquid plane, right? So it has a viscosity to it. So all the planets that are moving through the solar logos, through the solar system, are creating waves of astral, like ripples. What astrology is tracking the movements of the astral, right, to get a sense of the currents. And obviously in astrology, you have the sun, you have the moon, which is always doing this thing, but we also have these deeper astral energies, which are astral archetypes that are weaving through our psyche, but also through the world the whole time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I think of the astral. I've been a psychonaut since I was 18, 24 years. And I've never been into astrology particularly. So, and nor have I been that particularly interested in astronomy either.
Sure.
It just hasn't been my thing. But I'm certainly interested in the psychonautic path. So my experience with the astral is, I get there all the time in medicine, and there's all kinds of beings that are there. There's all kinds of things. So I'm accessing it, but not actually finding. I've never actually, until this podcast right now, recognized the correlation with the astral that I'm in psychedelic in the psychedelic world with the astral in the actual physical world.
So the reason that is there are harmonics of the astral, major harmonics. So in the tradition, you have to obliterate the first level of harmonic, which is particularly around our planet, like an astral field around our planet. When you can permeate through that, you get to a planetary, it gets cleared out. It's no longer a mythic, magical. You're basically into a astral dimension that is multi-planet, like planetary civilizations, stellar systems. You get outside of what the tradition calls the ring pass knot, which is like a developmental ring that when we're mature enough to join cosmic civilization, we enter the cosmic astral.
And then the access to what Matthias would call the Federation.
So Matthias has access to that level of the astral, which isn't, most shamanic practices are still stuck within the gravitational astral field of our planet.
Which is, they would call the lower astral, which is a pretty, astral. It's a fucking jungle. You know, it's a jungle because the planet is a jungle, right? Like ultimately, fundamentally, there's an amazing amount of beauty here, and you can access the planetary celestial in a way. But nonetheless, the lower astral of our planet it's intense. There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of light.
We're at war. So there is, I think, a quarantine. Like to contain that.
Yeah.
Because the solar level of the astral, which is where you'd gain access to that kind of multiplanetary system, that, you know, you gain access to that based on a certain level of initiation.
And so that in the psychonautic realm, we'd call that, when you reach that higher astral, you actually start to make a distinction and you call it the celestial.
The celestial.
And the celestial plane is where you're actually accessing the star beings, like the Pleiadians, or the beings that channel through Paul Selig, those type of beings.
That's all the Buddhic.
The angel, archangel planes.
That's right.
Yeah, and so those would be in this system, the Buddhic plane, roughly.
And above.
And above.
But you don't get access to that unless you're accessing the Buddhic level of the astral.
Right.
That make It's like it's like, think of music. It's tones, octaves, right? Playing chords that open up octaves of those dimensions. And as you mature, you're not just playing chopsticks. You start playing
Chopin. Yeah. All right. So let's go through this. Let's go through this map and let's allow it to take us wherever we want to go. But the first layer, which is actually, they call it the seventh because it counts down, not up.
Yeah, we're actually the bottom of the
bottom of it. So the seventh level, which is really the first level in a way, but we're counting down. Remember, so it's the physical.
That's right.
So talk to me about the physical, this physical level, tissue layer, plane.
Sure. Yeah.
Of existence.
So every tradition has a term for this. I love like the Hindu term, the annamaya kosha, basically the food sheath, right?
The food sheath.
The food sheath, right? So this is Aubrey and John that's made of like that beef that we, right? Like, you know, it could be beefy.
Yeah.
It could be like vegan.
Right.
But like, even if you're a breatharian, your physical body had to have been built by some kind of food.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is
you give me ribeye energy. I'll tell you that. I feel a little bit more like sirloin, like strip steak.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel the strip steak.
I think you're more cashew butter.
Oh boy! I'd say
I've seen how much cashew butter you eat.
I do eat a lot of cashew butter. I'd say our brother Kyle Kingsbury. He's more of a T-bone kind of guy. Oh. You know, I'll take the strip steak, you know, and you can be a ribeye.
Okay. So our planet, Earth, right? So we can call her two terms for her. Gaia, Sophia. So Gaia would be more of her like actual meat body, right? And Sophia would be her Buddhic layer. She that we're trying to all birth together would be Sophia.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, but Sophia is not part of the physical plane.
No, that's Gaia. So Gaia, her physical body is the physical, it's the mineral dimension of our planet. It's the sacred geometry of physical reality.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the first initiation, the first initiatic path pertains to that level. Right. So what are we learning? We're learning to get on it.
Yeah.
Right. So you're learning to master the physical body.
Right. So, total human optimization.
So you have to hatha yoga, martial arts, right? So you got to master that level. You master food, right? Consumption. You master activity. What else? You master pranayama. You master the breath, and you master, which is difficult for all of us. Like the culmination of it is the mastery of rhythm. the mastery of the calendar. See, until we're actually on a sacred calendar altogether, to totally master that initiation, because you can master most of it. You can master like 5, 7. As long as you're mastering more than half of it, you can go on to the next thing.
And it's interesting because some of these things like breath work can actually help you master further planes, above this. And something like sex, for example, you have to master it in the physical, but actually if you take it to its ultimate tantric potential, you can actually unlock even the Buddhic plane, which is the fourth layer.
So these are like, where do you begin this practice?
Right.
So you begin the practice of sexual yoga at the first initiation.
Right.
Within the mystery schools, it was like, you're 18, Aubrey, John, it's time for you to go to like...
And just like, it's like basically like learn how to eat pussy.
Learn how to eat pussy and learn how to move. Well,
that's the first level of the physical plane, right?
I think that's the first lesson in that curriculum. I think the second lesson is how to circulate like pleasure through your whole body mind.
But that would still be, I'm trying to understand where the distinction of the physical and when we're going to the emotional. So still at the physical, you're still talking about moving the energy?
Okay, so the physical plane has 7 subplanes, right? So this is harmonic. The first 3 subplanes, physical, water, which resonates with the astral body, and the third, like metabolic energy, fire. But the top, well, put it this way, the top 4 levels of the physical plane are actually
ethereal.
Are etheric.
Yeah, so it says here there's density, liquid, gaseous.
That's right, gaseous.
So it's like earth, water, air.
Basically, it's fire.
So gaseous is fire. Air/fire.
We got to find a better term. I don't.
Yeah, but roughly like
that's
air/fire, and then there's the etherics, but 4 levels of the etheric.
Yeah, so the lowest
that all participate in the physical, which is
physical,
which is interesting because it actually sets a pretty high bar for mastering the physical plane.
So mastery of the physical in my lineage involves like like you can do breatharianism, right? Like that's easy. No. I'm going to be absolute. It's not a big, because if we're photonic, if you understand that there's an etheric level that resonates with like, then the whole understanding of what nourishment is, when you install a different operating system, then you can actually extract that level of energy.
So there's levels of mastery of the physical, which would make you almost like a physical incarnated deity just from mastering the physical.
Golden age. When we think of, let's say, even in the Bible, which isn't golden age, we have like Abraham living 700 years. Or these guys knew how to live. This is directly related to that tech.
Yeah.
Now, remember that like within the golden age, and we'll have to ask Matthias, I'm curious, like he probably remembers different sections in Atlantis where lifespan was probably really large and then it slowly like shrunk over that 100,000 year period to 30 fucking years.
Right.
Right. Now,
there's some debate about that stat that some people actually lived longer in those older days, but nonetheless,
if you knew that, so.
He does talk about there was also different types of beings. There was blue beings that were like Isis.
Well, we because the astral was still open and because the Buddhic plane mystery schools were operational, we were part of Galactic Federation. Like there was a lot of.
Which is if he describes someone like Isis was not just an idea of an amalgamation of an archetype. Isis was a being that lived for hundreds of years that was blue and more veil and carried this energy that was present.
Yeah, she could be representative of a particular star system, just like we might have an ambassador to ambassador of England here in America.
Yeah.
You would have an ambassador from, like the Pleiades or the Arcturians or the, particularly the Syrians who have a lot of influence on our initiatory system.
Yeah, the Orions. Yeah, all right.
So back to what we're saying is the mastery of sexual energy is a mastery of life force.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So within even that, so first initiation would have a number of departments: sexual yoga department, physical yoga department, diet, calendar, exercise, and probably martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep,
like,
yep.
in fact,
awakening the warrior, awakening the sacred fight, the sacred, which
maybe
is
even
within all
7
of us.
departments, all those, like, there'd be 7, right? That's the first initiation.
Man, it's like you could spend your whole life just trying to master,
Sparta,
and it
right?
would be a well-lived life.
Well-lived life.
And just think like how much collectively we're all failing to master the physical, the physical plane on this planet.
That's right.
It's wild. I mean, sexuality has been degraded to such a point. Diet and food has been degraded to such a point. Right. Like fitness has been degraded. And interestingly, like in the media now, there are some of the more radical kind of leftist mainstream media is trying to say that all physical fitness is some reversion to Nazism and fascism, right? Like they're calling gyms like fascist training centers, and it's like fucking crazy, right? It's like
so sad because like who doesn't love to like dance and move and celebrate?
Exactly, it's this crazy.
The sacred animal.
It's so crazy what's actually happening now. Right. But anyways, that's only a subsection of this crazy world.
So let me just like add a dimension to this, which is like interesting. Within the esoteric tradition, it was understood that there was a cycle before Atlantis. So if Atlantis is 100,000, and I'm not a historian of the hierarchy, so I'd have to like talk to some of my companions who are part of the history department. But essentially, the first initiation, all of what we're describing, was what you and I, and everybody's listening, mastered in Lemuria. So Lemurian times was related to the training of the physical animal and the sacredness of the physical animal.
Yep.
Atlantis as a cycle was like we were learning. So this is part of our planet waking up. So she wakes up her physical nervous system, of which we are kind of the, right, physically. And then the next level was the astral. So the Atlantean cycle, we were learning for 100,000 years, and let's just take that as we were learning about the astral. We were learning about that
so is the astral plane number 6, which they call the emotional?
Yes, that's exactly.
So all right, so we're moving from the physical to the astral / what would be called the emotional plane.
So this is your
and it's also
shamanic.
called the cosmic liquid.
That's right. And if you think of so if the physical is mineral intelligence, the astral is plant intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? It is the fact that you and I, at some level, we're plants.
Yeah.
I'm a rose.
I'm a rose.
Fucking Rosicrucians, brother.
Let's go.
Like that's right. Right. So
I'm also a cinnamon.
A cinnamon.
I'm a rose. So those are the 2 plants that I've dieted. And in the Amazonian tradition, the diet involves you taking the spirit of a plant and bringing it into your astral body.
Well, you're drinking it in a liquid, which is the water,
and bathing in it in all forms.
That's right.
And then in deep meditation and isolation, you bring that energy of the plant within your body, and then you get the gift of being able to sing the medicine of that plant and emanate the medicine of that plant in your being.
So it's important to know that was also a part of our European initiatory system. So the European initiatory system, let's say the Druids, you got like 3 levels. The first level essentially would be the bard, right? Like learning. So learning to master sex is also learning to master like music,
dance,
right?
Yeah.
Second layer, they would call the ovates. So they had particular interest in tree medicine, and they did the dietas, the tree dietas that you're talking about. That was the whole shamanic level of our indigenous European culture.
So you're talking Druids. But probably there's more than Druids. Druids were probably...
Well, it would have been...
at the least Druids and whatever other...
So what we're saying is this is planetary tech. So this is planetary tech. So...
like the Germanics probably had a different name for Druids, but they probably had a similar...
in terms of that grade?
No,
for sure.
Like these ideas
the Druids are the planetary tradition. Like, right? Think of it as one tradition.
So Druids, Sadiks, whatever the Germanic name is.
Think of from a planetary perspective, one tradition with an exoteric dimension but with one tradition with an esoteric unfolding, because it's planetary, it's biological. It ain't like, it's not just philosophical. It's actually how our planet as a being is constructed. And our traditions are like enzymatic processes within the body of God, a body of a goddess.
Beautiful. Right? Beautiful. All right, Bard,
so let's go back.
Bard level 1, Druids. Bard level 1, level 2.
Level 2, Ovates.
So like the shamans that we're talking about,
shamanic.
that are doing tree dietas, and that's what everybody knows about the Druids, is their connection with nature.
You go to mushrooms and you're in nature. Level 3, mental plane, Druid. Right. So the Druids were the learned ones because you were learned. You understood the books. The Greeks. The Druids knew Greek. Greek was their language for the educated Druid class, and they were also the judges. So the courts of law were run by people of at least the third initiation.
So we're moving. So there's the emotional plane.
So let's stick with the emotional plane for a little bit.
The emotional plane is, and just to locate that real quick. So the emotional plane. Level 6, again, we're counting down from 7. Emotional plane, level 6, the astral plane. This is what the Ovates were. The Ovates were working with as they were doing their plant dietas. It's where the shamans would be located.
That's right.
The Amazonian shamans would be located in that emotional plane, masters of that emotional plane.
Yes.
And then there's another level that's the Druidic level, probably the Sadiq level, probably the Nagwal level.
The beginning of that.
Which is the mastery of the mental plane.
Yes.
Which is master. Sadiq is master. Nagwal is master. Like in the Toltec, it's the master who can paint the masterpiece of his own life.
Okay, so think of it in terms of a university, because it is a university. It's a planetary university. Right. So when you get to like 3rd grade, okay, you've just got a master's degree.
Yeah.
Then you got a doctoral degree.
Yeah.
Doctoral degree is 4th grade, and then we're going up to like the chancellor of the university.
Right.
Okay, and then that ends the planetary cycle, and then you access a whole nother hierarchy.
A whole nother level. All right, well, let's go back. So we're going back to plane 6, the emotional plane.
That's right.
Before we, and just end the astral plane.
Let's expand it. Let's expand it. So practices would be, there's many different variations of ways in, because again, what we've described is, for that first initiation, we could spend a whole life doing it.
Yeah, in the physical.
In the physical. Right?
For sure.
So we could do, it's the same thing with the astral. So we're going to have, this is like mastering devotion. Right? Like real emotional devotion. So our emotional body becomes completely cleaned, and it becomes like the emotional body of a mother Black Panther committed to her cubs. Just
powerful image, yeah. Otorongo.
Right? That level of devotion through our whole emotional body. Devoted to what? To the next level up. And to her cubs, which is like, we're all cubs, right? That level, that layer, I guess it would also include astral projection, lucid dreaming, medicine work, because it is...
So magic is coming in. Magic is starting to come in the astral level and
That's
the
a great
emotional
point. So the term magic means imagination. The astral is the level of the imagination. So all the practices related to imaginal practice. So lucid dreaming is imaginal. It's in the world of images, right? A lot of plant medicine is in the world of images. Visualization practice, like live your best life and visualize having yourself, getting a red car. Magic. Group ritual. It's all happening at the imaginal level. The imaginal layer is also the astral layer. The way that we control our emotions is through image. If you envision yourself to be a Black Panther, you're a Black Panther.
Yeah, and envision means like through my body, I envision God is a classic, is a classic translation of the text. So to envision, you have to feel it. And this is what Joe Dispenza teaches all the time. You don't just envision yourself as a picture. You feel yourself into the vision. you actually emotionally
For sure.
create resonance
For sure.
with that image. So it's not just pure visualization with your with your pictures. It's also the feeling of it. Like you just described becoming a Black Panther. In your recent ayahuasca, I've become a triceratops. So it's not that I envisioned
I've become
myself.
a giant spider.
Oh, we're in a battle.
We're in a Shemana battle.
It's
I
like
become Ganesha, and you're inside of me.
yeah, because I'm fucking you, because I'm a giant, even bigger than Ganesha.
Fuck! No! So
it reminds me of Sword in the Stone, where Merlin and Madam Mim were having their.
It reminds me of some of the stories I've heard from Hamilton.
From Hamilton as well. All right, but what's interesting to me here is you would think that this practice is mental and emotional.
Okay, let me just. Okay.
Yeah.
The practice has 7 layers to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a physical dimension, I guess, which is if you want to be the Black Panther, at least like physically. You got to physically maybe move like her.
Right.
Then you've got to the 6th layer would be got to like feel how her emotional body would feel. Right? Mental level would be like start thinking.
There's actually a panther crawl that you do in Animal Flow.
Okay.
Which is very interesting. Like you just actually move in this particular way. I think it's called a panther crawl. Is it called but it's a cat. It's a big cat anyways.
Big cat. So then you would have the buddhic, which would be like, and then you would have an imaginal, the imaginal, what you and I know as the imagination, would be just a visual representative of how to behave, how to feel, how to think, and how to be devoted in that way. So envisionment, imagination refers to a full-blown, multidimensional astral body experience of that particular form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is, it begins here and just like the physical that can take many, like sex, for example, can traverse the dimensions. So can the imaginal. Yeah. So can the imaginal realm, which really
transcend.
Includes exactly.
So
it goes all the way up.
When we build our new Planetary Initiatory School, which we will, the first band of education, which if we were going at it full tilt, we could probably get through in a year or so. If that's all you were doing,
right,
was like training the physical body, eating right, having great sex, right, doing your breathing practices, we'd move through that. Then we would move into 2nd grade, right? And if you were doing that in a committed way and all of those pieces full time, like, frankly, college. I mean, this is where we put it into an educational model.
College could or should be, but yes.
Well, K to 12 and then right? Then we move through that whole piece. And actually what college actually would be this 3rd level, which is then we get into like the mental.
Knowledge.
That's right. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. And so the feeling of the 3rd level, which is what we're saying is druid or mastery, which is actually just the 3rd initiation of 7, but you're a master compared to most folk. That's got a strong hermetic feel to it, right? That is the polymath. The truth is, we're all polymaths.
Of course.
Right?
Some are just
Well, if you're
more profound.
If you're at the 3rd degree, you can see it.
Yeah. And then you start being able to draw connections between various different fields. That's the value. That's what Robert Greene would call the Da Vinci effect. Why Da Vinci was such a great and revolutionary thinker was because he was a polymath that actually could draw wisdom from what he knew of sacred geometry, what he knew of, what he knew of all of the, fucking mathematics to engineering to, architecture to all of this other shit. He was able to draw a connection to painting and all of this. And it all wove together in a way.
That's right.
And so that would be mastery on the mental plane a way.
It would be mastery on the mental plane, but moving in to the buddhic level of the mental plane. So think of music. So you're now in the next octave, and once you hit the fourth note of that mental, then you're getting. So in the tradition, what happens then is your multi-paradigmatic cognition comes online.
So in this sheet I have in front of me, it says there's higher clairaudience, planetary, psychometrics,
yes,
high clairvoyance, discrimination, spiritual discernment, response to group, spiritual telepathy. So this is another higher level of magic where actually clairaudience, psychometry, clairvoyance, imagination, emotional idealism was actually located first in the emotional plane, but it reaches a higher fruition.
Virtues, that's right.
It reaches a higher fruition in the mental plane, along with the knowledge and along with the integration of including and transcending. Now, here's a question. It seems like some people try to skip any level of mastery at the physical, emotional, and jump and bypass to the mental and just try to learn shit. But I actually don't find them ever to be wise. Not that I don't listen to them, but if they don't embody wisdom in their body or in their emotional body, then I don't actually think of them as a wise man or a wise woman.
So if we intuit, let's say they haven't passed 50% of the class, right? Because again, what we've said is you could actually spend a whole life, you could spend.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. If you've, let's say, completed the first 3 lessons of the physical and not made it to the etheric level, and you jump to doing meditative practices, that would be a bypass.
Right.
But if you'd made it to fourth lesson of the physical, you'd be able to start working with meditative practices in a safe way, because it isn't. Yes, the grades are linear, but we're all playing music, right? So there's a room within that for chord playing, particularly because we don't have those initiatory schools. So if you come back, and in a prior lifetime, you were learning a lot of 3rd grade mastery material, like meditative material, if you weren't careful, you would ignore the first 2 classes because it would be like, yeah, what are these guys doing? This is like, kinder.
Right. And you would try to claim some spiritual materialism hierarchy that, I don't need to worry about this because I got this next thing.
That's right.
Instead of appreciating someone like my brother Aaron Alexander, God damn, he is fucking mastering this physical world. And I bow to his mastery at this dimension.
That's right.
And that's what the actual appropriate response would be to someone who has actually loosened the grip of the ego.
So my mentor, one of my mentors, kind of philosophical mentor, Ken Wilber, he would articulate what we call the integral level of development. And that integral level of development is essentially the lowest level cognitive operating system that you need to operate at that 3rd initiation in order not to fall foul to the very processes that you're describing. Because once you realize that these are levels of our being, that they're musical notes, and it isn't transcend and exclude, it's include and transcend, but that cognitive way of understanding holarchy, it takes a certain level of psychological maturity. Once you get there, we then work out, cleaning up, waking up, growing up, opening up, and showing up. These are all dimensions of the path. And you can't just wake up and not clean up your psychological material. Right. So it's that level of understanding is super important for all of us, which is really appreciating that there are 7 colors, and it's not that indigo is better than red.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, I get it. And I think actually, we've been in a deep exploration together. And I've been in a deep exploration with Mark Gaffney and a deep exploration with some amazing minds. And I think I have a good intellect, but actually I think the reason that I'm able to hang and actually have this intellectual conversational discourse with masters. I mean, you guys are masters of bodies of knowledge, is not because I'm particularly learned, although I have, as a psychology major, and I've read and I do read, but it's not that. But it's just that I have enough schooling in the physical plane and extensive schooling in the astral plane.
Sure.
So that actually when I'm accessing the mental plane, there's a foundation that allows me through my body of what I can feel and what I can actually understand, that actually makes it easier for me to actually grasp some of the mental concepts.
Yes.
Because I can hear something I can feel the truth of it because I'm attuned to my body, because I'm attuned to my astral body. I can feel the truth of it in a way that's like, it lands easier.
That's right.
And so I'm able to grasp information faster. So I guess this is a message to those, people who are more bookish. Like, yes, that's important, but actually if you go back and start mastering your physical and your emotional, it'll actually be easier for you to grapple with some of these mental concepts in a way.
Well, so actually, this in the tradition, the seed in every one of these lineages is what we in the Buddhist tradition would call bodhicitta. Now, bodhicitta is the heart seed, and it basically it exists as a feeling, as a physical feeling, as an emotional feeling, but most importantly, it begins at the level of mind, which is, I will awaken for the sake of the whole. Now, once you put that program in, which is essentially the Christic Buddhic.
So we're now talking level 4.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can be when you get on the path the moment that thought actually arises. Right now, because
you don't have to reach this the schooling of the mastery of level 4, but the seed of level 4 exists.
Well, we don't have these schools right now. So if you're out in the if you're out in the field, which all our friends who are listening, if we begin to, at some point on your journey, you decided like, I will do this for the sake of the whole. Now, once you that's the birth of Christ in the manger. That is the bodhicitta, the seed of Bodhi, Buddhi, the seed of Buddhi. Now, once you've planted the seed, it will resonate the fourth, even if you're not at the fourth layer.
Right.
It will resonate the fourth at the mental plane, astral plane, and physical plane.
Right.
Now, one of the ways the fourth functions is what we call technically direct, valid, non-conceptual cognition.
Right.
Intuition. So once you apply that fourth, that seed and you cultivate it, you'll start smelling shit and smelling truth. Even if you're not at the fourth initiation,
right?
The fourth will resonate. That tone, that note will resonate because you'll know truth at both the physical level and at the emotional level. You know what's true.
It's interesting. The podcast that came out prior to ours, which, we're moving forward in time because this is going to come out in 2 weeks. The podcast before it was with Sean Chester, and all we were talking about is how that seed has been watered and nourished. And it was like a 2-hour recruitment for Team Life, Team God, right? It was like we were just talking about how beautiful the deepening commitment and the watering of that seed has been, and how important and actually clarifying that is to all levels of our life. And it was really interesting to just understand and make the correlation that that's really what we were celebrating. And there's many more things we could have talked about actually, but we were so excited about feeling that seed and recognizing it in each other and recognizing that how deeply we're intending to water it.
Yes.
And it's not that we've landed ourselves in the Buddhic plane and in the level, but it's informing all of the levels and actually drawing us forward on this path where know that we're moving in the right direction.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So this is the heart seed of the world that our hearts, which is the fourth level, know is possible.
The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. Charles nailed it.
That is the imagery, that is the rallying cry, right? At all the levels, because once we have the imagery, the astral imagery of a planetary civilization, of a garden kingdom, like look at the fucking imagery that's fed to us through empire. But once that imagery becomes the imagery of that world.
And this is what Avatar 1 did. And Avatar 1 got a lot of things wrong in the story, but one of the things they got right is they gave us an image of the kingdom. They gave us an image of the kingdom as garden. You know, when they're in the bioluminescence of the night, and you know, awa seeds are floating by, which is the feeling of spirit of God, of actually reaching out through this, and the beauty of it and the savagery of it, but all was celebrated in a sacred way. I think that image in itself it affected people so deeply, because it was one of the first images, and it was a fictional image, but it was an image of the Garden of Eden. It was an image of this, of this place that we know is true and possible, that we maybe have felt in certain places and sacred places in our own earth, but it evoked that feeling, and that's what was so transformative about that movie. Now, of course, then they have everybody fighting and going to, you know.
Same old story.
And then it turned into the same old story, but there was images of a more beautiful world that we were able to see. And now it's like, how do we actually translate that into the image of seeing our own earth in that way? And that's what we're doing in our book, is we're talking about how we actualize the kingdom. It's also what, you know, we're throwing a festival called Arcadia, which is a festival of a more beautiful world. So we're creating an ethos. Which is in Area 15 in Las Vegas, which is, Vegas is as much empire as anything is empire, right? It's money, but it's at least, the thing I like about Vegas is it's obvious that all anybody cares about is money. It's not hidden in this virtue signaling. It's not hidden in these value propositions that are false and lies. No, Vegas knows it's about hedonism and money. And that's the only thing that fucking matters in Vegas. So there's like in the obviousness of it, you can relax.
So Vegas has an astral dimension to it, right? So it isn't just a physical city, it's an astral city as well.
Yep.
Right? And once I know that you get, like, once you see that, it's like, oh, it's an astral city.
Yeah, it's like a planet from Star Wars, but it's actually telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Always.
It is what it is.
You know what this bar is.
It is. Yeah, that's right.
Like, you know the rules of this bar.
Yeah.
I just want to take a brief moment to let everybody know that we're back again with the Arcadia Festival of a More Beautiful World, November 2 through 5, Area 15 in Nevada. And our lineup this year is insane. We have actually, literally, my dream lineup of artists and speakers, including like Chromeo, The Glitch Mob, Floozies, Dr. Fresh, Troy Boy, Elderbrook, Jai Wolf, Desert Dwellers, Parangi, Vailana, Makad Brooks, The Human Experience. I mean, the music is out of control. On the main stage, I'll be speaking. Mama Gina will be speaking. Del Bigtree will be speaking. In Q, the greatest living poet, in my opinion, will be speaking. And we got Matthias DeStefano. We have Blue. We have so many unbelievable speakers and unbelievable experiences at the Area 15 property out there in Nevada, which is also mind-blowing and awe-inspiring, and just a beautiful community of people that are there to make a stand for life, to make a stand for celebrating our sovereignty, our freedom, our love, our joy, our ecstasis, our play, and wrap it in a container where we get to actually stand together facing a shared horizon and say, we are here, we are here, we are here. We're going to blow this away. Anybody who comes, I promise you, it's going to be an unforgettable experience. And I just can't wait to see you guys there. So if you're interested, tickets are going extremely fast. Go to fitforservice.com/Arcadia with a K and check it out. There's a few different ticket options, whether you just want to attend for the festivities at night, or if you want to be part of the full immersive speaker program, or if you want to help with a lifetime membership and be a builder of what Arcadia not only is now, but will be for many years into the future. So once again, fitforservice.com/Arcadia with a K. I can't wait to see you guys there. I mean, there's some trickery. Like they're trying to trick you into believing that the slot machine is a good idea. They're trying to trick you into all of these different things. But nonetheless, the tricks are obvious. Like you know the odds. They can calculate the odds. You know what the margin of success is. You know that if you play, if you play craps the right way, you actually can actually narrow the odds to give yourself a better chance. If you play blackjack the right way, you can actually tilt the odds so you can come close if you're lucky to winning.
If you play it from the Buddhic level, so let me just say about the Buddhic level, when you connect with it, it is synchronicity. So those of you, who are listening and yourself, when you have had that run where you know.
Yes.
Okay.
So which is why I love craps, because you can step into this other intuitional level, an actual magical level.
Beautiful. That's the fourth. So that is the Buddhic level of the astral. When you open up that, you're doing synchronic magic. It isn't like massive magic that takes like oomph. It is magic that is like effortless and fueled by the power of your love of what you're doing.
And anybody who's played craps cannot avoid an understanding of magic. Like that, really? For if you're really a craps player, and for those people who play craps, like there's no craps player that are not wildly, you would look at it as superstition, but it's not superstition. It's actually an awareness that magic is real. Because you know it, because you've seen it over and over again, and you feel the energy of a hot table, and you feel the energy of when you have the dice, and you know that you can control to some degree when you're going to roll 7, when you're going to hit your point, when you're going to go, with the hard 8 instead of the soft 8. Like there's a magic that you can practice, and that was actually something. I have to give credit to my Aunt Tanya and her husband Dave, because they taught me craps, and they were deep into the esoteric Western magical traditions. And so they would actually have a practice craps table. So we would actually practice. We would practice both intuiting and also controlling. I forget the name of that. Dean Radin's podcast, we talked about it as well. So there's intuiting what's going to happen, and there's also affecting.
Psychometry,
psychometry? Exactly. Affecting what the dice is going to roll.
On that list in terms of like sub skills,
right?
That would be one of the the physical manipulation would be one of like the lower ones, but it can be controlled through the heart.
Yep.
So where are we on our journey?
So we're moving into we've been hinting at this level 4, the Buddhic Christic plane.
Okay,
but we haven't really landed there of like what that looks like.
So let's just complete the mental.
Let's complete the mental.
So your friend who's come and taught on Hermes Trismegistus.
Yeah, so that was the conversation I had with Robert Edward Grant.
Okay, Robert Edward Grant. The esoteric mathematics, chemistry, also known as alchemy, astrology. Remember the Greek mystery schools, and the famous Greek mystery schools were run by Pythagoras and Plato. So what you know is the study of geometry and algebra and all of this had a whole esoteric dimension.
Yep.
These are the guys who built the pyramids. These are the guys who built the cathedrals. So it is the kind of education, if you were to get the best of a Masonic education, right? Esoteric or Rosicrucian education or Hermetic education, and understand that the Rosicrucians and the Masons were the vessel in the last 400 years of the Hermetic transmission, right? And that Hermetic transmission we last see it like in Egypt, and then it disappears
and then
into Atlantis, right?
And then reemerges through the mystery schools. Maybe it was never lost, but at least went underground.
Well, the mystery schools have some slight tones to them. So for instance, I don't think the Druidic school had a strong Hermetic ray.
Or mathematic
ray.
Yeah.
And this is because different mystery schools have a tone that is archetypal of one of those 7 tones, or a chord. So there might be a 2-4-6 mystery school.
Okay.
Or 1-3.
So you're going to have to explain this now.
Well, okay. Well, think about the difference of the feel of, let's say, the Druids versus the Zen Buddhists.
No, I get
Yeah,
it. I
okay.
get it. But
Right.
but you referenced, and we've talked about this, the 246. Is the 246 referring to this same map that we're talking about? The one or in the
Okay,
1357?
so there's a deeper archetypal structure here.
Okay.
The deep archetypal structure is called the rays.
The rays.
Okay.
And are these the rays? Are we going through the rays, or no? Are the rays different?
We've got to be. It's multidimensional.
Is it correlative but not exact, or is it?
Yeah. So the rays are said to. This is part of esoteric cosmology. So they're said to be radiated through the seven sisters. Right. So these are like an archetypal structure that our universe is structured around. Okay, so first ray is called the ray of power, and it's got to do with the pure force of God, pure force. And
So would that be level 1, which we haven't got to?
It
resonates with level 1 divine.
With level 1 divine, and that is the force of God.
And that's Elohim in my tradition, which is the force of God. That's the face, that's the facet. So if you're looking at the refraction of light, like through a diamond,
right,
and the refraction of light. I mean, a rainbow is 7 colors, right?
So paradoxically, the color of this is actually red. So because it's like, it is the power of God, right? If we're thinking it from the inside out.
That is right. The rainbow is 7 colors.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is one way that light actually refracts to, and it does it seemingly so far correlate with this map that we're currently going through.
This is how the cosmos is.
Right.
This is not philosophy. It's esoteric science. Right. So it's like, I mean, you got to remember, like Isaac Newton this is what he spent. He's with the prism and like the 7 colors, he was an initiate, right, of the Rosicrucians. Like this is a part of our history that has been hidden, but there is a sacred science.
Right.
So should I just go through those rays? These are cosmological.
And we can go through the rays, or we can continue on our journey and then correlate them to the rays as we continue on the journey. So,
sure.
If we want to backtrack again to get people, caught up to where we are. So there's the physical, which is level 7, which is where, where we're beginning in the journey.
Yes.
And so what ray would that be?
7th ray.
And so it'd be 7th ray.
Yes.
And what color is that?
Oh, gosh, like.
All right.
Let's just invert the system. Let's say it's turquoise. It's like if we think of like New Age as being like at the top, actually New Age is the bottom, and we think of red as being like, oh, that's the physical. Well, let's put red at the top. Yeah. The force of pure spirit.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not worrying about the colors, but ultimately, so there's a physical, emotional, mental, and we've arrived at the intuitional, the Buddhic plane, level 4.
Level 4.
All of these have colors that correlate to the refraction of light through a prism.
There's a whole science. This is where we bring on mantric tech, and like this is the weaponry of Kala Chakra. Like there's a whole, when you start writing music aligned with this stuff, you start.
Now, a rainbow appears in a particular sequence of color.
Yes.
And so would the sequence of color actually correlate to the 7 levels, the way that it naturally appears?
Yeah, you'd have to, I mean, I would rather talk to a specialist in the 5th department, which is basically esoteric physics.
Yeah, to understand, all right.
Because I don't want to say things which aren't my department. My department is like the second department, which is more education and teaching.
Yeah.
So I want to be really precise when I answer that,
Okay, so fair enough. We'll leave that question. I'm going to actually pull up the colors of the rainbow just out of my own curiosity.
Right.
So, because I think it's very interesting and I think it's actually very important to understand that. All right, well, check this out. So I just pull up rainbow, and the outer plane is red.
And the innermost is?
It is purple.
Okay, so I'm guessing, so what's interesting here, we have purple, right? So basically this would be like, this is an outpost of the hierarchy on the physical plane where you are like communicating at ground level. seventh, right? Like
so this, if we're following the rainbow, then we have purple, which would be the physical.
Right.
Then we would have blue, which would be the emotional / astral. Then we have green, which would be the mental / the mental plane that we've been discussing.
Yes.
And then we have yellow, which
that's
would be
right.
the
That's the
Buddhic.
Buddhic plane where the symbol is the sun. There's a yellow sun.
Yeah.
Right? Gold. I mean, really the color is gold, would be gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yellow is gold.
Yeah.
Right?
And then actually they don't have it in this particular rainbow. They only have 6 colors, but there would be another color
Orange
in
and
here.
red.
Yeah, orange and red.
Yes.
So somewhere between the spiritual is orange and red, and the gradations between orange and red.
And basically, and we're just kind of jamming here.
Yeah.
If you think of the colors for the chakras, you just kind of like chakras are going red to purple, and planes are going, red to purple the opposite way. So there's some beautiful symmetry at play that if we asked our Hermetic, those who doing the third initiation, like what was going on, or if they would be able to describe in beautiful geometry
and color
and mathematics
and probably
color.
Frequency and probably
all of that
and rhythm,
the whole language of science.
The whole thing would actually make sense. But it is interesting to see that red is on the outside of this, just like you said, the divine plane.
That's right.
Would be red, and as we're moving up through the colors of the rainbow, that's where we're ultimately
coming down.
Yeah, we're arriving at. All right, so we've moved from the mental into the intuitional, into the Buddhic Christic plane. So anything more that we want to add? And again, what this is describing here on this chart is idealism, intuition, divine vision, healing, comprehension. Those are the things that are listed on this kind of map that I have in front of me.
So this plane of practice, right? So this is known in all the traditions. This is the level where you officially become a bodhisattva, right? So that seed of like, I really want to be a benefit. I really want to serve the Dharma army. I really want
all in for all life.
All in for all life. When it becomes like now you're like maturing and you're operational, right? Like you become that being. That's this fourth point. It would also really, in some ways, be the level of the form of an avatar. Like it's the level that an avatar or a Buddha or a Christ teaches from, right? So the cognitive dimension of it, which I've already mentioned, is like direct, non-conceptual, valid cognition, pure knowing, because you've now become synchronic with the Buddhic field of the planet,
right,
and of the cosmos,
so you can read directly from the field.
Read directly, right? And of course, depending upon the subplane that you've opened up, like, so for instance, if you haven't opened up, let's say the 7th subplane of the Buddhic, your physical intuition might not be so good, right? So you might not be a great CEO who needs to like move forces around.
Right.
So intuition works in all those different dimensions. So we got the intuition, and then we have the feeling quality. Now the feeling quality is of universal love. May all beings in all realms recognize their true nature as the heart mind of the cosmos. Right. So it's like it is that level of when you sit down in your practice. And we both know that when we intentionally go there, it reformats.
So in the teaching to become the Sadiq, we're talking a lot about these levels, and this is from my study with Mark Gaffney, and so you would be masters of Ayin, which is the sense of being, the being in the heart, the heart mind, just the place of absolute being, Ayin, and also mastery of Yesh, which is becoming, and that evolutionary, the doing. So it's being and becoming. It's feeling the heart of God, and then becoming, which is the evolution, participating in the evolution and the doing, which is the bodhisattva, rather than the monk who just sits on the mountain in Ayin.
That's right.
Who's just in the feeling of it, which is important and beautiful. But then there's another dimension, which is Yesh, which is, no, and now I got to do stuff, which is driven.
Yesh.
Yesh.
Interesting.
which is driven by compassion, right? Like that's what moves the bodhisattva.
So within my tradition, within this kind of planetary Buddhist tradition, so if you have form and emptiness, so form would be 7, and complete openness is 1.
Mm-hmm.
The midpoint is 4, which is said to be the heart, which is the heart, right? That's what we call the heart wisdom. Now, when the heart wisdom is fully activated, and that's where you sit, each of these planes has a law. The law of the 4th plane is the law of magnetism, the law of it will attract.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it do? It pulls the energies, the higher energies down, and it pulls the lower energies up. So the center of our planetary system is not to be at number 7. The center is to be right at the heart, and then the whole thing configures. The highest and the lowest come to meet, which is why the 4th level is called in the Christian mysticism the crucifixion, but the esoteric version is the sacred wedding.
Uh-huh.
That's the wedding between the Magdalene dimension of ourselves and Yeshua, which is the union, the hermaphrodite,
Uh-huh.
the androgynous being, which is the complete soul.
And then in my lineage again, which is the Solomonic, Hebrew lineage, the Kabbalist lineage, they would call this zivug Shekinah, which is the union with Shekinah, which is which is Yeshua merging with the Magdalene.
That's right.
On the highest level. So zivug Shekinah is like the merger of self with God.
And in the alchemical tradition of the Rosicrucians, this is the union of the white unicorn with the red lion. And that's the same principle in the Buddhist tantric tradition of the union of the red and white drop. They become unionized at the heart. So there's in the tradition, there's a unicorn and a lion in union. Isn't that part of the symbol of Great Britain? Well, so of course it is. Like there's a reason why we're great. Let's be really clear. I don't have an American passport.
Yeah, we passed 4th of July. I'll let you get away with it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Like, just to be clear.
But it is very, it's very fucking
the
interesting.
Rosicrucians founded America, brother. Like at least we were part of that project.
Right.
We weren't part of the let's obliterate the natives. Okay, that was the Dark Lodge. That was the empire.
Right.
But as a part of seeding this beautiful land of yours with the promise of a new Atlantis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So this is like one of those deep encoded symbolisms of the union of the unicorn and the lion.
Well, we had to, like everywhere, we had to go hidden in the UK. But hidden, but not that hidden, in the sense that Francis Bacon, who was the founder of at least the kind of like a major player in the Rosicrucians, right, was also Chancellor of the Exchequer, right? So he's and Newton, Isaac Newton, also a member of was also like Chancellor of the Exchequer, and like
what's the Exchequer?
Finance, like head of. Like, I think Newton was head of the Bank of England as well. So there was still a time back in Elizabethan times and a little bit where this world that we're reawakening to, the Renaissance world, was actually part of the world that it was still alive, right? So yes, you see it there, the red lion. And you see the white unicorn as it's a promise, just like America has this mythic promise of like the Masons kind of forming Washington, and like that was a promise of a new Atlantis. There's also a promise of the kingdom, the return of the king, right? Of the garden, right? I mean, Brits love to garden, like there's a promise of that world that all of our hearts know is true in every single civilization, and including European.
And this idea of the king has been wildly degraded to ceremonial, not
That's
real,
right.
rather than the real awakening and emergence of the true king.
Well, the return of the king, like the return
of the king,
which is a mythic. It's a chapter in the saga.
Yeah, and it feels like we're in this chapter.
We're exactly in this chapter.
We're awakening our king within ourselves, celebrating the king within ourselves. And someone like Bobby Kennedy, in my perspective, is a symbol of the return of the king, the just, the one who's connected to the field of value, the one who's connected to truth, who's actually in mastery of the physical plane.
That's right.
Who's working out every day, going in, still, I don't know, 69 years old or something like that, and do 25 pull-ups. He's like, and then also the astral emotion, that ability to navigate that, the mental.
Well, all
he's
of us.
starting
it would be also true for you, Aubrey. Like, what I mean is,
it's not just him, but he's a symbol of the return of the king that's universal.
To the extent that you and I grow into our kingship, we can all recognize another king at the table, because the reason why Camelot fell. And I don't mean like your Camelot, I mean my Camelot, right? Is because it wasn't fully shared. Like the kingship wasn't fully released.
So you're talking about actually your own community that you were a part of, actually specifically. And we don't need to go into the story of your own personal life.
But we also recognize that there are other circles out there where there are other kings who also have their own circles.
Yeah.
Where there are other kings and queens coming into that circle. And to the extent that we can recognize, there's another king who's performing another function in the kingdom, and the kingdom isn't just one king, it's a kingdom of kings and queens.
Right.
Then we go, he needs support.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, of course. That's a huge part of what a huge part of what I'm doing. What my mission is to find the kings and gather the kings. And Matthias has put forward a prophecy of the gathering of the 12 kings. And so part of my charge, because I actually genuinely trust Matthias, I trust that he's actually downloading from the field, and everything that he's guided me to do, including going to Egypt, created the most profound life-changing experience of my life. So, and the rituals that he's enacted have created the most profound life-changing experiences of my life. Right. So I fucking trust him. And his prophecy that he said is gather the 12 kings. What's interesting to me is that I think we think of king in term of gender. Sure. Right? We think of king in term of gender, but actually
sovereigns. Actually,
king exists in women as well as men. And as sometimes we call it queen. But when we're saying queen, we're often meaning woman king.
Yeah, so
there's actually a movie called The Woman King. I think that's actually accurate because there's actually a quality of a queen that is different than the quality of a king, but a woman can be a king and a man can be a queen.
Sure.
We were actually talking about this on the car ride,
that's right.
which is like, I have an inner queen that is also very developed, as well as my inner king. And Vailana has an inner queen as well as an inner king. Actually, she was, just to be kind of personal, she was developing her inner king. And then actually there was a part of her inner queen that was actually malnourished in her path to develop her inner king. And then there was a recalibration that happened where I think the disambiguation of king and queen and understanding that these are both energies that exist in men and women.
That's right.
And I think this is a longer, bigger bracket than I want to get into now. But there's a whole kind of idea of the king and queen codes that celebrate that actually these are not gender specific. No. These are actually qualities, archetypal qualities that we can raise up within ourselves, and they're subtly different. So there's a woman king, there's a man king, there's a man queen, and a woman queen.
There's a magician, right, as well, right? There's a magician. I mean, thinking now of the tarot, which is essentially what we're talking about, which is one of the hermetic teaching mechanisms. Empress, fool, king, queen, right? All of these archetypes that you're referring to are those archetypes. This is how, within the Kabbalistic tradition, the tarot card fits straight into the tree of life, which is the tree of life. I know it has 10 sephirot, but those 10 sephirot are actually 7 levels when you align them, when you slice it sideways. So basically what you're talking about there are the tarot is like, what's the archetypal psychology best necessary? Because there's a story in there, right? Like there's to bring about a psyche that is like complete and integrated through all of its different parts.
Yeah.
So let's just go back to Buddhic.
So we're back to plane 4.
But back to plane 4. So one of the things we said was direct, valid, non-conceptual cognition.
Right.
Intuition. Right. And we all know we all have a taste of. We can have a taste of what that's like. The 4th initiation, you are basically installing that as your operating system. You're installing the Bodhisattva vow. You're installing the Bodhisattva code. You're installing the Tzaddik code, right, as your fundamental operating system. So that changes how the mind operates. You don't have to think anymore. Like a lot of what we're doing right now, we're not thinking about it. We're just going with it.
Yep.
That's got to do with that particular energy. Politically, it would be fighting, or developing and moving towards a world economy that was built on the principle of sharing and complete openness. It would be a decentralized financial system that was based on love and sharing, right? So it is, when we see it, we're seeing the world that our hearts know is possible, which is like the complete integration of psyche and techne. The 4th Industrial Revolution fully met completely by the 4th turning of the Dharma for a world where like the masculine and the feminine are perfectly in marriage, right? Where we have the garden and it's beautiful and it's natural, and we have technology and it's refined, but the technology is informed by the good and the beautiful. It isn't just some automatic, ugly tech.
Right.
So that, now it's said in the tradition, in this planetary tradition, our planetary tradition, that our planet is going through its own 4th initiation. Meaning that Sophia Gaia is going to attempt to build that world.
Then what's happened is now people have an allergy to the idea of this one world, one government, because we actually intuit correctly that the people who were driving for it are driving from the force of empire, which is a dark force of control.
That's right.
Manipulation, anti-truth, anti-life. And so we're allergic, like, fuck no, we want, individual, because we don't trust that those forces, but it's actually this idea of one planet that can stand as Earth, representatives of Earth in the Galactic Federation.
That's right.
This is an inevitability and actually a necessity, especially if we're going to withstand existential threats that are non-terrestrial. Because right now we're just worried about terrestrial existential threats, which are significant. And also give cause for those people who are not connected to God and not connected to life to say there is a need, and this is part of the justification why all of these people pushing for one world government and control, they're not exactly evil. They just see that this is the out that is necessary to prevent the existential crises that are happening. However, because they're not connected to the field, they're not connected to the Buddhic plane, they're not connected to God, they're not seeing what they're doing, but perhaps, and this is what we're talking about in our book, they're creating the infrastructure that will infiltrate from the inside out with psychedelic medicine, with awareness, with initiatic practices, that the actual scaffolding of this one world is what we need.
That's right.
And so potentially they're working on behalf of the kingdom, unbeknownst to them,
100%.
While their intentions 100%. Are malevolent.
Right.
They're actually doing something that's going to be helpful, because in this world, I can imagine, let's just talk about money, because money is such a deep-seated part of what drives empire, money and the power over other people. I see, so there's a company that I'm getting involved with that actually can print gold currency of every variety, from 1/1000th of a gram to...
Like gold.
Oh, I haven't shown you?
No.
Oh, it's fucking incredible. It's incredible. So
we could have a gold. We could have a gold.
So all currency, instead of being paper that has some value that you assume, this is fully assayable, recoverable gold printed on a currency sheet that's beautiful.
Brilliant.
And of course, there would be no necessity for exchange rates and all the money,
gold.
the banking. It would actually be, no, this is our currency.
So that's so that would be Buddhic level, gold, yellow, currency.
Yes.
Universal, like
universal
beyond
currency.
Bitcoin. It's
the physical version.
It's the physical version.
Then there would be a Bitcoin.
Then there would be a tethered
Bitcoin to gold,
digital, Helios credit.
Yep.
That's brilliant.
And so that would be the universal currency that would also be decentralized because you can't. It's gold. You can exchange it anywhere. You could do whatever. Nobody can control it. And the decentralized finance that Bitcoin offers and the sovereignty of being able to spend that however you like.
That's fantastic.
Like this is part of what I envision for the kingdom. And this is why I'm pushing, what the resources that I have into this gold currency. The company's called Valarum. And it's fucking incredible. And I'm working with it. I haven't talked about it too much because I'm actually birthing my own, printing company. We're going to have beautiful art. We're going to have, so some of the art that you've seen in the house, Hanayata. So there's going to be her art on these gold, basically currency surrogates.
Yeah. So the Buddhic is the kingdom, right? Because also it is a group consciousness. So Buddhic relation, at the Buddhic level, each of us would have our own tribe, where we would have a level of deep commitment to to the kings and queens.
Right.
Or whatever gender and color and flag, like, of course, whatever that is.
But that's what we're saying. That gender actually doesn't matter when we're talking about king.
It's a rainbow. It's a fucking rainbow.
Whatever you want to be, whatever gender you are, we're all a unique gender anyways.
That's right.
We're all some combination of masculine and feminine, and we all have an inner king and inner queen.
That's right.
No matter what biology matter whatever pronoun we want to use, doesn't matter. There's
think of a whole
in there.
restructuring of society where it's around circles, right? And the sharing of resources within a particular structure. So that there you also have this Buddhic principle of what relationship would look like, which is more clan would be the old, like a kind of a unconscious version of it. It would be a relational circle of deep commitment and of deep sharing of all resources. Now,
and that's what I've been trying to build with the bead necklace that I've talked about, which is individual relations. And so it's actually an evolution of the concept of circle. And this is, so I'll go into this, briefly to explain. What I saw as the problem with a tribe as a circle is there's the inside of the circle and then there's the outside of the circle. And people outside of the circle are jealous and are kind of, it's a closed system. Like it's hard, like you're either in the circle or you're out of the circle. But what this is they're like nodes. Every person is a node, like the center of a spoke of a wheel.
Sure.
And you actually do have a circle, but they're spokes of a wheel, and then every node has their own spoke.
So we're talking about
the center hub, like the hubcap.
Right.
Everybody, so it connects, and all of the hubcaps connect.
Right.
And so you do have a circle. I do have my necklace, which has 12 beads on it or something like this. Now I just traded with Sean Chester, so. There's a certain number of those for me, which is unique to me.
Yes.
And they don't all have to get along with everybody else on the strand. I hope that they do. In some cases, they don't, and that's rather annoying to me. But nonetheless, it is what it is. But then they also get to create their own circles, and I don't have to be friends with Wyra's jungle friends down in Ecuador.
But there's also there's a structural way I can see as you're talking.
Yeah.
Where they get double linked. So
right.
And that's actually more than double. They're, as you're saying, they're multi. It's a horizontal holonic structure.
Yes.
That demands a particular kind of discipline. I mean, it's not like you have to respect the structure of it because
exactly, and then there's deep vows, there's commitments, there's initiations, and you have to. The beauty of this strand is that if there's any aspect of your relationship that's out of alignment with any one of those people, you actually feel the weight on your strand. And when you look at it, you're like, fuck. And actually, I was going through a ceremony recently, and I always wear my beads in all of the ceremonies that I go in because I call them forward. And I've told you stories of how I call them forward as allies in the astral when I need them. And also call them in the physical. When my father passed and for the funeral, I had every single bead on my necklace who showed up there to be with me in the physical, that was on there. Those were the first people I call because they're the closest relationships. And then there's people who are working on developing that level. And then it's a vow. They're vows that we make with each other.
So that structure, right? If you imagine that on a planetary level,
yes,
it would have to be supported by an AI, a benevolent AI system that was able to kind of manage the resources.
Yeah.
And the whole financial system and structures that were put in place, they would have to be sophisticated, interconnected planetary structures. So going back to what we're saying about how the kind of forces that we can all see that are shadowy forces that are moving towards a kind of shadow version of the one world government, right? That archetype of that particular move resonates with the first plane. So the first plane resonates with power, and archetypally, it's about governance and law. So when people are, you could resonate, if you were a power hungry sociopath, you might be doing terrible things, but you resonate with that particular frequency of the sacred. And so you're unconsciously beginning to you couldn't help, now, albeit in a terrible way, actually moving the way that spirit wants you to move. You think you're doing it because you're going to have your one world wet dream, where actually we're waiting.
Yeah.
Right? Shambhala warriors are going to infiltrate all of those systems.
All of the scaffolds.
All of the systems.
Yeah. And so what I also imagine with these bead necklaces is actually the strand itself, having the strand itself is a commitment to a certain ethos and value system. So anybody, I imagine having these large festivals, these gatherings
Beautiful.
Like they did at Uluru in
put it on the central altar.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, and everybody's wearing wearing the strand. And by wearing the strand, you're saying that I abide by a certain code of relation to my own.
The code of the circle.
The code of the circle to my own tribe. But there's also a code of values that we all share.
For sure.
And so I imagine everybody gathering in these places, wearing their bead necklaces, meeting people who share similar values that they may not know, but it's saying these are all people who abide by this certain code.
So that is the round table. The circle
Yes.
is the round table.
Yes.
It's how we build. It's beautiful. What you describe is how do we build a culture that's fun enough, right, and joyful enough. Well, of course, it has to be mythic. It has to have a kind of a feel to it. A feel of kings and queens and of jesters and of play and of music and of laughter, orgy, celebration. I mean, whatever, right?
And truth, So I'm going to actually go through and read what the vows are. And these vows are evolving. And actually, I wrote these vows probably 6-7 years ago, and there's been a lot of transformation. And I actually haven't changed the vows. So they're not exactly what I think it'll ultimately be, but it's enough. And so I'm going to actually go through and I'm going to read, because I just went through this, as I said, with my brother Sean. So just give me a second here. And Derek, okay, it's right here. All right, so what we have is another, so it has to be witnessed, and it's witnessed by somebody else who carries the strand, who can witness it, and it holds accountable, even if they're not on your strand. They recognize the strand and they understand
the circle.
They recognize the circle.
Right.
So there'll be a witness and a facilitator of it, and that witness will ask. In this case, it was Vailana who carries a strand as well. or my brother Eric here, he's one of the beads on my strand. And so he could witness this, let's say sometime down the road, we're trading beads, and Eric's there witnessing, and he would say to both of us, is there anything at all that is unsaid that you are holding on to? And he would ask that question of both of us. And if there is, we speak it. And it's witnessed, and we speak the truth, and we share the truth. And if, after that process is done, then we both repeat, everything is spoken, I have nothing to withhold. Then the next question, is there any grievance, judgment, anything at all you are holding on to, which is kind of a reiteration of the first one, but just making sure, anything, like, you sure? And then you say, there's no judgment between us, you are always forgiven. Then number 3, do you commit to being there for your brother or sister in times of scarcity and abundance? And then you say yes, hopefully. If you say no, then the process stops and you're not going to trade beads. And then we both say, as long as I have food, you shall never go hungry. When we both have food, we shall feast. So the commitment to sharing. And then the next question, do you see the warrior in front of you who will fight with you whenever you should call for any battle, large or small? And you say yes. And then you say, and then both people say, as long as I draw breath, you shall never fight alone. Then, next question, do you see yourself and your brother or sister in their divine fullness, celebrating their royalty unflinchingly? And you say, the king is me, or king or queen is me, celebrates the king or queen is you. And then the last question, are there any reservations, anything left unsaid? Again, is there anything there? And you say, if the answer to that is no, there's no reservations, then you say, with this bead, and you hold your bead. And so you have your home bead. It's always the same bead that represents you. So you're always giving the same type of bead to every person. That bead represents you. My bead is made of manzanita wood, which is very sacred to me. It's a sacred wood that I would work with in my grandma's farm in Redding, California. And so I got manzanita beads, so that's my bead. And so I'd say, with this bead, a symbol of our soul, we are bound as tribe. And then the facilitator then finally says, it is done. And at that point, from your right hand to the left hand of the other person, you exchange beads. And then you exchange beads, and then you wear that bead on your strand. And then you hold that, you hold that vow as sacred.
Aubrey, that's so fucking beautiful and good and true. What you're describing here is what so the first thing is, what you're describing is when we talk about the sacred wedding as the archetype of the Buddhic plane, right? In the past, it was only individual initiates that could go there. Now, what's changing now is the planetary tradition has decided we're going to do this as groups. We can bring hundreds, thousands of people through. So what you're describing is, what is a natural level of the marriage of the lion and the unicorn?
Right.
At our hearts as individuals, but then as a community. What does Buddhic, Messianic, Christic community look like? Now, of course, what it looks like is a circle, and the symbolism of the Buddhic, the solar symbolism, right? That if it's the sun, is the 12 divisions of the zodiac, which of course is why Matthias is saying it's 12.
The 12 kings.
And it would be a universal process of 12. There's 12 kings here, 12 kings there. It is, and it's interesting, we've been developing a meditative technology that works with 12 people. So it's like a 12-person committed group meditative technology, which would provide the kind of Buddhic frame for some of this relational tech that you're describing.
There's a symbol, and I think it's a Buddhic symbol, and it looks like a like one of those pirate wheels,
the wheel of Dharma.
So that's the wheel of Dharma. And it's actually an icon in emojis. If you actually look, There's one of those. It's in the purple. It's in the purple zone.
Yeah.
And it looks like the wheel of an old ship that used to steal the ship. And this is like actually what these beads are. It's like you're the center of that spoke, and then there's a circle around the spoke, which is your strand.
That's right. You know what's funny? So we're talking about, from the point of view of Dharma, this is the fourth turning of the Dharma wheel. Of that wheel. That wheel turns as we evolve. And the fourth turning pertains to a teaching around this buddhic level, right? Which is what we're describing. How do we teach a Dharma from that level? So when we initiate people, what we're initiating them into is straight into that culture in a way and in a speed that hasn't been, like, the thing about the tech at fourth gen tech is it's not the cart and the horse. It's a Tesla.
Yeah.
It's a quantum, right? So we haven't yet built that initiatory system.
Right.
But we're putting we are building it. We're all building pieces of what it would take to install.
And in the absence of that initiatic tech, in the absence of that, the tech that I've used, because that's what I'm familiar with, is the psychonautic tech.
Sure.
And the initiatic. So everybody who's on my strand, I've been with them in the deep, deep waters of ayahuasca journey. There's not a person on that strand that I haven't been deep in the medicine. Actually, none of them that I've not done ayahuasca with. None of them that I haven't actually gone to the depth, like pressing our psyche. And that's a part of what gives us the trust that we know that we're actually there, and that we've actually showed up in the dark times.
It's not easy.
Like if one of us goes to hell, or one of us has an encounter with the dark forces. And I think before we wrap this podcast, I want to get all the way up to the first level, because we're still on number 4. We've moved from 7 to 4, and we can move through the rest of them quickly if we want. But then I also want to talk about that force of resistance that's going to resist you the whole way, all the way through each level. And as Stephen Pressfield describes capital R resistance, it's the force that tries to block you anytime you're going from a lower level to a higher level, whether that's in the creation of your art or whether it's in your own spiritual development.
Right.
So I do want to just put that pin in that at a certain point, let's continue following this map.
Well, let me. So 5, 6, 7 is beyond the pay grade.
That, I mean 3, 2, 1.
Yes. Sorry. 5th initiation, 6th initiation, and 7th.
Right.
We're talking about now levels of mastery of the highest levels in the planetary hierarchy. Right. So what we've described thus far, every listener of this podcast could participate in the path that we're talking about right now to that 4th initiation. The 5th, what's happening now is...
Which is level 3 in the system. Again, we're counting down.
Which is what's called the Atmic, and then you have the monadic, and you have...
The divine.
The what's called the Ati, or the Adi, or the divine, the original. Those initiatory processes are part of a slower, deeper planetary cycle, meaning the planetary organism is moving us as beings through a biological process that is her own awakening. And different levels of this are moving at different speeds.
Yeah.
So the speed of the physical level, there's a lot of change going on. And of the astral, when you start getting to the Atmic, you're now at a slower cycle. And
Atmic is level 3, the fifth initiation.
Now you're getting at a slower class graduation. So if you're not in that class right now, you probably ain't going to be in that class for a while.
Right.
Does that make sense?
This is real. We're really talking
about very profound levels of initiation.
Yeah. And so, all right. So I'm gonna read some of the things from this Atmic plane, and it says all knowledge, perfection, realization, active service, and beatitude. What is beatitude? What is beatitude? Beatitude. What is that? I don't even know that word.
That would be a dimension of esoteric Christianity, which isn't my. We'd have to talk to my friend Rolly, who specializes in esoteric Christianity.
Interesting. All right. So in this all knowledge? I mean, we're talking about this is wild. This means that you're actually
this is omniscience.
So this is actually being able to tap into the I in many ways, like the eye of God, like the one that can see everything with the clarity. And
it is the eye, it is the iris, it's the point. So the Atman, atom, is a point. So it's the point of pure individual consciousness, of pure I am, of pure atomic directionality. That then can be used if you have fully completed a third initiation of all that mental stuff. You can then access that through the intuition. So you can go from like 3, 4, 5, Atmic, Buddhic, mental, and not have an intuition that is vague, but have an intuition of like, what's the equation for this for this particular thing?
Right.
So this is
so all right. So level 3, the spiritual. We're talking. I mean, and this is many ways. This is the eye of Horus, eye of Ra.
Eye of Horus, eye of Ra. This is the deeper individual intelligence behind a Buddha or a Christ. Like a Buddha or Christ is teaching from that Buddhic Christic level, teaching a teaching of that Buddhic Christic level, but the light is being focused through a single lens, and that lens is the Atman.
And in the Temple of Osiris, when I told on the podcast with Makad, I tell the story of Matthias once again, that fucking crazy fucking being. He after my Buddhic initiation in the Temple of Hathor, I had an initiation in the Temple of Osiris where he came and did some things, activated, it's the singing thing, and he did something to my head, and I became the I temporarily, and I could actually see all of reality and recognize that my seeing of reality fundamentally changed reality. And so I think if I go retrace back to the Toltec level, this would be the highest level of the
magic.
Nagwal.
The highest level magic.
Highest level of magic, where intention, the intention of the Nagwal can actually, which is the sight that can come through, not only can see the field, but see reality into existence.
So this would be in a training tradition. You've done all the prior trainings, and now you're learning how to sit in concentration meditation for 3 or 4 days without a stop.
Yeah.
Like the drill is now a drill.
And this is what a lot of the gurus from the Hindu tradition, the Indian tradition, they all speak of these activations that
this is the level that the activating the cities consciously is safe. The problem is you can do that. You can go off and do that level of concentration at any level of development. It won't be the Atmic, but you'll be like tapping that energy.
Right.
So you can tap that energy for darkness. Like,
sure.
I mean, basically that would be the third subplane of the astral, where you are like using the astral energy of like powerful concentration to hook up to that level of potency.
So whenever I've arrived there, and again, I think the psychonautic path allows you to experience temporarily these phenomena.
For sure.
What's interesting is whenever I've gotten to this place, because that's since the Temple of Osiris activation, where I felt myself become the I, and Matthias whispered in that now you're the I, and I was like, fuck, and I couldn't even walk around. Vi was like trying to get me to go to other places, and I could hardly step and like move, and she's like, put your hand in this water. I was like, well, I'm gonna fall in the water. I'm not seeing. I'm seeing in like another. So it was like it was a very strange experience. But I've also re-accessed that place through the medicine journeys.
Sure.
What's interesting is like I understand that this is a place where I could, through act of will and intent, I could actually change something. But it's such a perfected state that actually my desire to change anything is absent. So I know you're saying that you could, I think at the highest level, I suppose you could use this for ill will, but at that place, it is to say, as it says, perfection, everything is fucking perfect.
Sure.
So I don't want to do anything.
No, but that's because of who you are.
Uh-huh.
Like if I'm some like, what do I think?
But could they even, I think once they reach that level, they would see that it's all perfect.
Because basically we're now beginning to talk about the energy of spiritual will, and you can tap into a lower harmonic of that energy.
Uh-huh.
Like a lower harmonic. If you remember, these are notes.
Right.
So this third note repeats itself in each of these octaves.
Yeah. So we're talking about Sauron here.
Sauron is
the eye.
Is the eye
that wants to build evil.
I'm fucking
Right.
I'm Claudius.
Yeah.
I'm Caesar. I'm fill in the gap.
Yeah.
Versus I'm Chenrezig. I'm Avalokiteshvara. I'm Ganesha. This is the level of I am of Avatar.
Right.
Like of your, not of your human soul, which is kind of 4. Now we're getting at a different level of potency of I am, but that is like, it's what the Tibetans call deity yoga.
Right.
If level 4 is soul yoga, now we're moving into to deity yoga.
Yeah, at level 4, I have an intense passion to like affect the world in a positive way.
Yes.
I have an intense passion at this level, which is level 3, which I've just touched. Mm-hmm. It's not like I have conscious willing access. The medicine can pop me into these places. I lose will, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is part of my training, is to actually, and I've thought about that, is like, God damn, I was there and I know that there's immense things that I could do, but I lost the will because I lost the will because I saw perfection in everything. And so with perfection in everything, you don't want to do anything.
So in the Buddhist tradition, we talk about practice. We're moving now here into what we call perfection stage and great perfection stage. So the mastery is, how do you fit together the various yogas? Because we started all the way back with like warrior yoga and sexual practice. How do we stack all of these together so it's not like, it's now the mandala is becoming more and more complex.
Right.
So to the extent that you have a refined image of the kingdom, of you as sovereign, your friends, and the world system, what this level, this Atmic level does now is you're locking that in place.
Yep.
For the sake of the whole.
Yep. I understand.
Right?
I understand. All right. So then let's move to the second, which is the sixth layer, but it's the sixth initiation, right. The second level, the monadic.
The monad.
And I think we talked about how 5-MeO-DMT pops you into, in many ways, this monadic state, where it's just like, it's everything. It is God as everything.
It's God as everything, and everything as like a pure light of intelligence, of like blinding light,
bliss,
knowing.
light, knowing,
bliss,
love,
life, knowing.
Yeah, it's all like, and you're blasted, and of course you can't hold it, and it's actually difficult for the body to hold it.
Sure,
but it gives you a glimpse of the monadic.
You will be able to hold it within this lifetime. You'll be able to hold it.
Man, I remember the first time I did it, really strong 5-MeO, actually stronger than was responsible. It was not a high level shaman. I've worked with a lot of high level and been initiated by high level Bufo shamans.
Sure.
This dose that I was given was far more than actually what I typically work with. But regardless, it was funny because it was the greatest feeling I've ever felt in my life. Mm-hmm. And then he asked me, do you want to do more? And I was like, fuck no. Like, this is the best feeling I've ever felt, but my body is going to fucking explode.
So remember that the natural state of this would be that so when you take the medicine, you abstract just to that level. That's the medicine that points it out to you.
Yeah.
But in the livingness of it, it would include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
So,
which has been skipped, and there's flaws and there's cracks, and so it's like if you try to play a cracked crystal bowl, it won't resonate exactly.
Yeah, it's that. But what I mean by that is that actually, okay, if you and I were on meditation, I could point this monadic level out as it's functioning right now. Then you would meditate on integrating it into your operating system as we're talking right now. So you wouldn't need the medicine abstracts, but you don't no one functions like that.
No. That's like
people,
you just kind of roll around or like, I have a brother over here who just kind of drooled a little bit and smiled.
So when
and other people are thrashing around, and other people are, whatever.
An example of a being who showed us what that looked like was Ramana Maharshi, one of the great Advaita realizers of Hinduism. And he stayed in the temple where he was like that, and they had to feed him.
I get it.
Okay. Now that isn't the initiation. It doesn't look like that. But what he showed was
you can stick the landing.
You can just He did it his way, which was like a continuous 5 DMT pen nonstop for right? What we're going to be doing is we're much more interested in an integral realization,
right,
where all these prior levels of functioning are transcended and included. So the meditation won't be abstracting yourself into that. It would be starting to include that within the operating system that you're building.
Yeah. All right.
Right?
I get it. So then, all right. So we're moving down.
So what happens then is now you're tapped in to significant planetary will, which is now you're tapping into the will of the force of the will of the Godhead, which is closer to the deep plan of what she, or the Logos, what Sophia Gaia is wanting to have happen.
Is it planetary or universal?
It's both. It's like, yes, I mean, she is a body, a chakra within the solar Logos. And the solar Logos is a chakra and a body within a stellar Logos, and the stellar is a chakra body within a galactic Logos. And the reason why it's said that the Earth is particularly special is she's like the root Kundalini. When we fire this baby up,
That's all the stories. All the stories are that the Earth has particular significance in all of the nations and star nations of the Federation.
I mean, the
dark ones and the light ones are paying particular attention.
It's like, when she goes nova, she's beautiful. Like she's beautiful. She's a beautiful. And there are other beauties in the galaxy. So Sophia is one of the
great beauties in potential.
And we're aligning to planetary and solar will, because the solar piece is like, he's also is like, he has an unfolding as well.
All right, so let's talk about the first, the first level, which is the 7th initiation, divine.
Right.
Divine. And so if I'm going to speak from my experience of what this might be, and then I'll see if this correlates to anything that makes sense on your end, I would say the only time I've maybe experienced this is the last time I did ayahuasca. I did it, and I did it with my sister. My sister Wyra was there, and it was beautiful, beautiful ayahuasca journey. And I won't share the details of this experience, but in this experience, then, she gave me a very strong blast of rape, of her very sacred rape and her very sacred prayer. And I was still deep in the medicine. And when we found each other in this way of like, we both knew that this was time and I was in this kind of bliss state for 4 hours, which is unusual for me. Usually I'm like kind of struggling a little bit, to be honest. But in this state, I was in a bliss state, and she blasted me with this strong rape, and I completely dissolved into the deepest peace and stillness of the void, and until actually even my breath stopped. and it felt like even my heart stopped, like everything stopped. And it was all just the deepest peace of nothing and the deepest piece of stillness and nothing. And there was an everything that was in the nothing, but the everything wasn't present like it is in the monadic, where 5 it's like, fuck, it's everything. It's every cry, it's every orgasm, it's every laugh, it's every color, it's every scream, it's everything. And this one was like, and then I had to actually like come back to breathing, like breathe. And that was potentially maybe the only time that the medicine has popped me into just a taste, or at least one taste of one flavor of what the divine might be like.
So one of the terms of this would be, in the Buddhist tradition, is the ati or adi, the perfected plane. Also the logos, like logoic. Now think of this as holonic. So what the holonic level is, it is the realization of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Of every whole.
Yeah.
Is that like cellular, planetary, cosmic? It's like wholeness all the way through. And that wholeness is complete openness.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like it's like the circle, and then the circle dissolves and space becomes the circle. A circle, holding all beings.
It's like an emptiness of presence, is what I could describe it as.
Yeah, and as a realization, what that means is essentially it would mean that you become the whole. So as a human being, the realization would be, I have now become the planetary logos. My body, my 7 layers, is in direct harmonic resonance with the planet and the solar system.
It's really interesting to think about a harmony that's so great that there's no differentiation.
None.
Which is why it feels like nothing, a nothing of presence, because there's no polarity, there's no difference in tone or color or anything. So it appears as
effortless. We call that the yoga for that we call that ati yoga, adi yoga. Dzogchen, great completion. That is like the secret. That's the true Buddha. Like there's the Buddhic as like this Buddhic, and the Buddhic culture at the 4th. But at level 1, now you have this is the Buddha's heart at level 4.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Buddha's crown.
Yeah. Whoa.
You can feel it in the space right now, right? Just like,
yeah.
This is the level that resonates with Shambhala, with the kingdom of God, which is essentially the planetary crown chakra, where the sages of our planet who have made it all the way through, our real elders, like the council of bodhisattvas, the real high-level kings, reside. And that's also where it's said that the deepest interactions with enlightened extra solar system civilizations happens at that level.
Yeah, I mean, because it feels like it would be that level, but also integrated with the other levels where that could happen, right? Because where I was...
The process that we are going to begin in our lifetime is the process of externalizing that whole thing down into matter.
Right.
And when we finish that, we'll have a planet that is physically connected to the galactic field. I mean,
right.
Like that's the Malkut in Keta in Malkut.
Yeah.
That is the form and emptiness and form.
Keta being crown, Malkut being chalice.
And where they both meet is Tiferet, is the heart, which is the Buddhic level. So at the Buddhic level,
which is also called, they call it beauty, but it's that. It's like,
it's her. I mean, it's, right. It is the beautiful world that we know and that we can see.
And beauty, and also king, but there's Melek, but there's Tiferet also represents the king, again, the non-gendered king. in a way is also another way, but it's beauty, the kingdom. It's the place of the kingdom.
It's a Buddha field. I mean,
it's a Buddha field.
It's like even, I would say, we're now talking like, I mean, kingdom, yes, Buddha field, meaning you have a civilization of beings who are functioning at that level and interacting with other civilizations. I mean, that's when the fun would.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's a way, like,
yeah.
What chapter, we're in a different chapter right now.
Sure.
But in terms of the planetary being and the planetary plan and what the purpose is that you're tapping in at the atmic level of what that flower, what she wants to become, we're getting a sense now of what a rainbow planet would be.
And this is, I think, as you've shared, like part of your, part of what's drawing you forward, part of what you feel is your dharma is to develop the schooling, the invisible college, as you call it, that actually can help people through this initiatic path.
Yes.
And I think one of the ways that, we're meeting is I've stumbled, honestly, stumbled into many of these planes through my persistence in following the sacred medicine paths.
Right.
And so I have a gnosis, some semblance of a gnosis of at least a feeling in my body of these different things. And so, I can talk about the different psychonautic practices that can help people get a taste of this. And then you can talk about how to actually integrate, train, and actually stabilize these ecstatic states.
That's right.
Which I have certainly not mastered, is the ability to stabilize any of these states.
And the thing is in this fourth turning of the Dharma, the tech is becoming that much more efficient. So what might have taken decades and decades doesn't have to, if we're practicing in a very specific way and understanding what it is that we need to awaken, right? Because people don't need to learn to meditate, to sit down for 3 hours nonstop, 3 days nonstop. What we want to awaken is this Buddhic level, right? Of universal love, of sharing, that has a particular kind of meditative practice and a particular methodology. Like this fourth turning has slightly different methodologies, using similar tech, but like putting them together like music. It's like it has a different tune to it.
Yeah. All right. So, we'll talk about the initiatic path, and as you're still in the process of developing it and creating it, and we'll leave that for another conversation and another time in our journey together through this life, which will be a lifelong journey. There's no doubt in my mind. About it. And before we wrap this podcast, we've talked about the seven layers, the seven initiations.
Right.
And I want to, as promised, talk about the force of resistance just for a little while. We don't need to belabor it, but the force of resistance that's working antithetically to prevent us from reaching these levels. And there's a story, and it's just a story. So I'll tell the story, and the story is that there's dark forces that draw power. And so the reason, like the motive behind the dark forces is that it's vampiric in nature, and that it's drawing power from the unrealized spiritual potential of every being and every planet. So if you imagine that we're in quantum potentiality, and so we have the ability to hold and access these higher levels of consciousness, spiritual energy, chi, prana, eros, life force, just call it life force. All of the unmanifest, unutilized quantum potential of this life force, there's an egregore, an aggregated being, and also smaller players, vampiric players, that feed off of the unrealized spiritual potential, life force potential of every being and every planet. And so that's the motive of this force of resistance that is actually trying to harvest for its own power.
That's right.
For its own, for its own individual power, all of the unutilized potential. So there's a force that you could call the opponent, Satan or Asatan, or there's many adversary or whatever you want to call it, but just call it the opponent so that we don't bring in association from all of this. The opponent, or I like Pressfield's name, capital R, resistance. that is trying to keep us from this realization.
Sure.
And I think this is where a lot of the New Age gets it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking like, oh yeah, it's all doing it for our good and for our benefit. Yeah, maybe at some super, at that level 1 divine, maybe.
Well, at our benefit, you got to learn to face the tanks and the knives, and that's for your benefit. I mean,
yeah. So the opponent can be helpful at that level. However, this is the fucking opponent.
Sure.
And when Hamilton, our brother Hamilton, Hamilton introduced me to the opponent. And he introduced me to the opponent, and that's exactly what he said. And the opponent showed up as this swirling black cloud of confusion and distortion and inversion, and the one that mocks love, and what in the Kabbalists we'd call, and Mark and I call Sitra Akra, the upside down, the inversion of all the good, the true, the beautiful, that we see happening in postmodernity, we see happening on the earth, we see happening in so many different places, the inversion of value itself. And that it's just trying to fuck you up however it can.
That's right.
So this is not to be integrated.
No.
This is to be actually resisted.
Well, this is why you and I say that on our heroic journey, there's an actual journey we have to take. It involves doing things. It involves saying no to certain things.
Right. Where's this discretion?
Well, discrimination.
So that shows up on level 5, which is the third initiation. That starts spiritual discernment.
So basically, it's said in the tradition that evil goes up to the cosmic mental level. So what we're talking about is evil that is based on faulty ways of thinking.
It's all based on lies.
Archetypal levels are faulty ways of thinking. So to protect ourselves, the first thing we have to get is we have to understand clearly, understand what's happening. If we understand that this is a cosmological process of our planet awakening, and our planet has real will to do that, and you align yourself with that, then the adversary has no, but to do that, you have to go all the way through. We have to go all the way through. Our bodhisattvic vow, our bodhicitta has to be aligned to this planetary being, and aligned, the fact is that you and we're going to get to the world that our hearts know is possible.
Right.
Now, when we don't understand the game plan, when we don't understand that the sacred has an archetype and a plan, the plan is said to be held within the first 3 layers. So the plan is, it's a sacred unfolding. It's inevitable. When we align with that, we align with the power of her power that's unfolding. And I think that these forces are
we can push them back. And this is we were having this conversation before the podcast with our brother Christian and Dave, and we were out there, and the way that I see it is that the opponent cannot be vanquished. The idea that you can vanquish the opponent. But what I see is like a rugby scrum. And in a rugby scrum, there's a ball that's in the center. And the idea is, with all of your force and all of your will, you lock arms and shoulders with your brothers, in this case rugby, or if female rugby, it's your sisters.
Rugby. As a kid.
All right. So you push and you push. And the idea is you move the ball.
That's right.
And if the ball is the earth, the ball is yourself, the capital S self, as Dick Schwartz would say, if you move the scrum where life, love, God is actually over the ball, then you can pick up the ball and run.
That's right. And so in the tradition, we talk about that. That's the planetary tradition. It says that we seal the door where evil dwells. We push evil off the physical, push it over time into the astral, push it up into the mental, and we seal, and it's sealed.
Yeah, so we push it from the physical, where into the cosmic liquid, and then even beyond, out of the cosmic liquid. So we're pushing it out of the tissue of where we are, so that we can actually abide fully in the kingdom.
And when we as a planet are super clear cognitively about what the sacred is, what the behaviors are, what the code is, nations, families, gone.
This is where, in my own, psychonautic contact with Pleiadian intelligence, which actually first reached out to me in my darkness retreat, which creates the endogenous DMT. And there's a sense there that they've actually succeeded in actually pushing. I don't even know if they have a physical planet anymore or whatever. It seems like they're actually in another dimensional reality, but they succeeded in pushing it out of their physical plane, out of the astral plane, and they've pushed it back to a point where it's actually not affecting them. The opponent, what I'm saying is I don't sense the opponent present in the Pleiadian consciousness where they reside.
The initiation that our Logos, Sophia, Gaia is going through is the initiation to that fourth.
Right.
That'll take her out of the mental plane.
Right.
She's been stuck in the mental plane of like where humanity's been in all of this for a long cycle. When she moves to that buddhic plane herself, she becomes cleansed of all that stuff drops away. And then we begin the journey that obviously like the Palladians and the Syrians might have been on this journey for millions of years.
Or billions, who the fuck knows? Yeah, and time gets really squirrely. And then at that point, they still can drop in. So the Pleiadians that are helping, which channel through, Paul Selig, who's I think one of the purest, clearest channels of this higher wisdom, they are reaching out to Paul as an act of will because they are still able to access the Buddhic plane of the Bodhisattva. There's Bodhisattvas among them out of compassion for us on our path are here to help us. And that's what is actually happening more and more is these shambolic level warriors, this plane of the star beings, the angels or whatever, through, even though they've succeeded for their own life, they're not doing it for themselves anymore, but out of compassion for where we are, they're showing up to help.
That's right. It's done.
Woo!
Right? Like it's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think we have to believe in our hearts. The way that we get there is by being there. The way that we get there is by like envisioning, which as you said is a whole feeling like this is happening.
Yeah.
Like we dispel the enchantment of disenchantment. We wake up into sacred world and we realize like we are blessed that we get to do this. Like we are blessed that we get to do this.
Amen.
Amen.
And I've said this before, but all of the algorithms point towards our existential destruction. Like you look at but none of the algorithms are accounting for all of the help.
Well, they're not running Buddhic code.
They're not running Buddhic code, and they're not aware of these higher planes.
So if you don't run at the mental level, right? The mental level, if you're still running the mental code, like level 5 code on the mental plane, which is like level 5, you're never gonna, when you upload level 4, which is basically heart, when you include heart cognition, wholeness, sharing, sacredness, the whole system morphs into a completely different setup.
Yeah.
So there's a coding level dimension to it. So the existential risk brings us to the edge of we need to do something.
Right.
Well, what is it we need to do? Well, we need to install this code in our hearts and in our circles and in our friendships. Let's go.
Let's fucking go. John, I love you, brother.
Love you too, brother. Quick plug, right?
Yes.
So, So for those who are interested in our conversation, I'm going to offer a introduction to Planetary Dharma, the path of the Rainbow Warrior, like a weekend online, December 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And you can access it through karunamandala.org, and we will post that link on the notes. Right?
And how do you spell Karuna?
Karuna, Karuna, Mandala, Mandala. And Karuna, this is our school that has an endorsement from the Dalai Lama, And essentially, Karuna means compassion. It is one of the facets of this Buddhic
And the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva. It's the driving force of the Bodhisattva.
Yeah. So
beautiful.
If you want to just get a little taste, come join us. We'll do it online. You get a taste of what we're doing.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you, brother. Love you guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.